last talk of this track. I'm going to make it a little bit fun for you guys. Thank you very much. I'm very flattered that you're all out here once again. My name is Carlos. I'm actually from Mexico, but I've been living in Chicago for the last 5 years. And I've been doing information security for the last 10 in different capacities and different positions. But I think at this point, this is pretty much a reflection on 20 years of information technology, 10 in security, and stuff that I think is pretty much happening forward, stuff that I see happening in the future, stuff that you can use in the future, and stuff that I've seen in IT in the last 20 years that I think is worth analyzing. It's kind of like a way of looking back and seeing what kind of things have happened that maybe you can relate to, maybe you can use to further your career, maybe you can use to make things more interesting. Because IT is definitely an evolving field, but it's a field that sometimes tends to get dry, tends to get a little way too heavy for us, and there are known signals that most of us are getting burned out at a very alarming rate. So let's try and see if there's stuff that we can analyze in here. You can take back home, you can analyze and pretty much take to further up your career. So disclaimers are not mine. These are my views, not my employers. Don't use this stuff to destroy the world. I beg you, please, or wreak havoc to someone else's lives. And if you're not, I'm not a certified life coach, psychologist, therapist, anything like that. If there is anything that you actually need to do with a professional, do it with a professional. I only do IT. I don't do anything else. So anyways, why am I doing this? Well, first of all, because I'm turning 40 years old. It's time of your life and you're like, recollecting on the stuff you did and analyzing what you did. Did I do those things good? Was I actually sucking all the time? Hell, I don't know. Because Dr. Johnson was good enough to let me spot in this roster, which is actually very, very flattering once again. Because it's time to reflect and time to on the road travel. What did I do? What have I done at this point? What can I do better in the years that I have left in IT? Left in the guys that you guys have left in IT. Because I just love looking at security from a different perspective. I am not a computer science graduate. I am not a pure IT guy from accounting. So I've been trying to assemble all the stuff from years and years of working in IT. And because I want you to think about security from a different perspective, from your very own perspective, which is obviously different from the rest of it, from the status quo. That is the one that makes this whole thing cool. Now, as the title of my presentation suggested, I want to talk about Benvenuto, which was one of the greatest artists from the Renaissance, but also inspired a guy that made a lot of things in modern culture, modern pop culture. But the stuff that this gentleman had in his head all the time is pretty much the center of some of my musings in IT, and especially in information security, because I thought that they related a lot into the way that we try to analyze the stuff that we've done and that we do every day in information security. Who was this guy? This guy was born and died in Florence, Italy. He was a goldsmith, sculptor, draftsman, soldier, musician, plastic artist, and poet. Kind of like Phil. He's a Renaissance guy. He did a lot of things in his life. Himself shot and injured Philippe Chalon, the Prince of Orange, and allegedly killed Charles III, the Duke of Bourbon, during the sack of Rome in 1527. Whoever's not familiar with the sack of Rome in 1527, I suggest that you ask someone about Disco Demolition Night at Comiskey Park in 1975, or about 10 Cent Beer Night at Cleveland Stadium in 1975. It's kind of like the same thing. Sculpted Perseus with the head of Medusa, which is one of the most important famous works of the Renaissance. And coined the badass phrase, a well-rounded man is an artist, a warrior, and a philosopher. That's going to be the central axis of this talk. That's going to be the center pivoting point of what I'm going to try to talk to you guys about here. Now, this is the one work called Perseus with the head of Medusa. It's a very, very well-known work of art. I wanted to show you this so that you knew what kind of stuff this guy actually sculpted. One of the most famous pieces of art in the Renaissance. Now, let's get to the point. Anyone know who this guy is? Anybody here is into grunge music. Thank you very much.
It's the original bassist, I think, of
Yes.
Nirvana?
Yes. The original bassist of Nirvana. So this guy had a very, very interesting life. Well, led a very interesting life. Jason Everman was born on October 16, 1967 in Kodiak, Alaska. Who was this guy? This guy joined Nirvana in 1989. He paid for the Bleach album. If anybody in here is familiar with Nirvana, the Bleach album was the first Nirvana album. Was one of the defining albums of the Seattle sound, which pretty much molded the Gen X generation. I'm part of that. Some of you guys are a part of that too. Pretty much, we went through life listening to people like this. Molded an entire generation of teenagers, not just in the United States, but across the world. Joined Soundgarden in 1990 as a replacement bassist, and got kicked out of that band too. So he was pretty much like that guy from the Beatles. He got kicked out of one of the biggest bands in the world. This guy did it twice. And then after that, influenced by Cellini's phrase, this guy decided to enlist in the U.S. Army in 1994, serving 2 tours of duty in Afghanistan and Iraq with the 2nd Ranger Battalion and the Special Forces. Then he worked and studied in the Buddhist monastery in Tibet and earned a bachelor's in philosophy from Columbia in 2013. This guy had a very well-rounded profile as a person, as a professional. Sometimes when I try and see security as a whole, I try to think about myself as part of that field and how does my profile, how's my life experience as a person influence the stuff that I go through every day? What is it that I know from different fields of life that pretty much help me get through the day, get through my work? And I think about people like this that have very well defined skill sets that help them do things beyond what a normal person would and make them more effective as professionals. Because they encompass all these things, they try to mix it up like this, and they pretty much accomplish more because they know how to integrate everything they got in life into information security. That's what's got me thinking about all this industry in the last couple of years. Look at that. So this guy started out in Nirvana in 1989. Then a year after that, he was in Soundgarden. And then 12 years after that, there's this guy over there in our province in Afghanistan wielding an M4 and full battle dress in snowshoes in the middle of nowhere. I try to think about security like that too. I've known many people in the last 10 years that have done this kind of thing. I've talked to many people that are actually present in this building that come from very different walks of life, and they all do security. And they all bring their own mix of talents and skills into this profession. And the more I try to analyze the stuff that they've done in life, the more I realize that that's exactly what makes them more well-rounded and more effective professionals. The fact that they're able to integrate all these things into what they do every single day. And the most accomplished ones that I know have a background very similar to this. That was kind of like the thing that got me 3 years ago, and I started putting up a theory about all these things and how they intertwine, how they work with each other. So, right after that, I got this graphic this year. I can't remember when I looked at this thing. It might have been like maybe 3 months or something like that. This is the SENSE Security Leadership Poster. This is kind of like the mind map of what a Chief Information Security Officer must have in mind every single day. You're a Chief Information Security Officer for a Fortune 500 company, even for a middle tier kind of company. You keep all this stuff in your head. All this stuff is in your desk 24/7. Some of these things are more terrifying than others. Some of these things are easier than others. But nonetheless, they're always in your radar in every single day that you spend in information security. And it's a whole bunch of stuff. Leadership skills, business strategy, industry knowledge, business acumen, communication skills, governance, NIST 853 framework, you got CISC, NIST CSF, ISO 27000, risk management. There's a whole bunch of stuff in there you need to look for risk management. Security operations, all the stuff that you do every single day in security operations. Patch management, incident response, ticketing. Jesus Christ, I keep going and going and going, and we wouldn't stop. Like, watching this gives you a headache. But we know that there are people that can handle this stuff, right? How do they do it? What kind of skills do they use more often? What kind of skills they didn't acquire in their role as CISO? How many of those skills were acquired during those formative years? And which ones were more important to them to get to that point? That's one of the things that I'm always thinking about. Now, when we think about security, security is not for the faint of heart. If we're doing security, it's because we actually like to be involved in very complex problems that need to be solved yesterday or a week ago, right? So this is not for the faint of heart. It's a profession in which we're always putting our heads into in such a way that we end up drained. We end up tired. And this is one thing that I saw a couple years ago. It was a phrase that I saw actually when I looked at the life of the guy on the bottom. Let's go up there first. Ernest Hemingway wrote this line from a short story called On the Blue Water. It was published first in 1936 in Esquire's first sports reader. And he said, "There is no hunting like the hunting of man. And those who have hunted armed men long enough and liked it never cared for anything else thereafter." When I first saw this, it took me years to understand it. Because I used to think that this was the epitome of the barbaric side of men. But then when I got into security, I got to think that this is actually what we do. We go after stuff that was caused or was exerted by other people towards us. We get a high of going after who caused this incident, who wrote this malware, why is it here, how did it end up in this organization in the first place, how am I going to catch the person or the entity that put this stuff in my network, in my systems. Why? And then you start hunting that stuff down. And the thrill of hunting this stuff down is really what gets to us. It's a rush. The first time, I can totally bet you guys that the first time you cracked your first case, your first incident, you're like, this is badass. I actually had to hunt this stuff down all the way to hours, days, months, years, boom, to get to someone that did this or presenting evidence of a case that was caused by someone else and you had to go out and take it. Now, this guy on the bottom, Gunnery Sergeant Carlos Hathcock, this guy was the most famous sniper in Marine Corps history. He set the world record for a combat kill in the Vietnam War. And someone once gave him that phrase. And when he had to reflect about it, he said, that Hemingway got it right. It was the hunt, not the kill. He believed that he always had a hard time killing people. But if he didn't do it, someone else was going to die. And it was always the hunt. It was always the fact that he had to go after someone and the stuff that he had to do to get that person. It was the hunt, the rush of the hunt that got him going. A lot of people in security like that. A lot of people like going after all these stuff and coming up at the end of the day and saying, I cracked it, I did it. It was the rush of going after this stuff over and over again. But that has an effect. That's actually a very tiring thing to do. It's a time-consuming, it's an energy-consuming thing. And many people are not ready for it. This is some of the stuff that's happening nowadays. Hacker suicide, burnout. Why burnout happens in information security. These are all headlines nowadays. The first one is debatable. A lot of people are going to say, yeah, this is debatable because those guys were doing not so cool things. Yes, but what got them to that point? What were the tribulations inside their own mind that got them to that point? Now, if some of you guys went to DEF CON this year, my friend Richard Thien had this talk. It was his last talk, I think it was 23 year run speaking at DEF CON. This is the one, this is the conference that he set up last year, not this year. Playing Through the Pain. It's actually on YouTube. If you guys want to check it out, it's really good. His talk for this year was even better. And it talked about how the fact of keeping secrets or keeping someone safe from a national security standpoint and a security standpoint, IT security standpoint, is very, very tiring. It has a very bad effect on people's minds and what to do about it. Because like I said, yes, it's a great rush. People really do get off it, but there is some sort of implication in doing this every single day. There's people that are just not prepared to do this. Now, let's go back to the main three elements of Cellini's phrase, the warrior. Let's try and put this into context for someone in information security. The warrior is pretty much your side, the side of yourself that has the ability to understand what your mission is, the professional side. To adapt to it as it progresses and to drive it to complete it successfully. That's the one side that pretty much got us here in the first place. We love to do this stuff. We know there's a mission. We adapt to that mission, and we complete that mission day in and day out. That's the warrior side. But then there's the artist side. There's the reason why I picked that picture. The artist is the creative outlet. The additional skills that give the warrior the edge to to overcome and succeed beyond standard expectations. We're just talking about languages. If someone actually is able to speak a language that a client of yours is using, but you don't use it, but you actually learn it, or you actually know how to speak it, then you got an edge. You're able to communicate with people to get stuff done. But did you have to learn it because you weren't in security? Of course not. You learned this somewhere else in your life. You learned this along your life path. Somewhere in your life you actually learned. Maybe it was in high school. Maybe your dad taught because your dad came from somewhere else. Maybe it was something that you learned because you wanted to do because you wanted to learn it in high school, or just pretty much broaden your cultural background. It's that stuff that allows you to complete that mission way, way better. Now, why did I pick that picture? Who knows who that guy is? That guy is Bruce Dickinson. He's the lead singer for Iron Maiden. That guy's like the ultimate polymath. He's a pilot, he's a fencer, he leads a heavy metal band, he has a degree in ancient history. This guy can do a ton of stuff. He's the type of guy that knows that there is something more meaningful than just the music. It's the actual panorama that he can outline because of all the skills that he's got. He's a businessman, he's an entrepreneur, he's an artist, he's a warrior. He's a lot of things. And then we get to the philosopher. The philosopher's side is definitely the side in all of us that allows us to introspect, analyze how we fit into the entire environment as a security professional. What is my actual mission within the organization? What is my mission within the security community? Because the security community is pretty broad. The security community loves people that are willing to give time to teach somebody else to do things. The security community loves people that have an outlook in life that is cooperative, that is sharing, that allows people to thrive in difficult environments because they share knowledge, because they are willing to help each other. That's the type of people that has come to that point. They know what their place is within their own world, within their own community. So that's the third side of the equation. Now, this actually happened a long time ago, in 1998. A lot of testimony in U.S. Congress. All these guys, the reason why I put this one, because all these guys got together once again in the same order at DEF CON this year. And they're all different guys nowadays. They've done a lot of stuff. The cool thing about these guys was, when I was listening to their conference, was that they've all been to different ways, on the walks of life. Some of these guys have been, once they were done with the hacker thing, if you will, those guys started doing a lot of things. They started doing software design. Some of them started working as consultants for the government. Some of these guys were consultants for private companies. Some of them founded their own their own companies. Some of these guys started going into other businesses. These guys were very well-rounded professionals that understood that their place in security was not just security, was doing a whole bunch of other things related to security. That's how they were able to reach out to just a broader audience when it comes to what the impact their lives and their contributions had to security. It went beyond that. There we go. Now let's talk about the toolbox. There's a whole bunch of tools that we must look at in order to integrate all this stuff into the security mix. And you guys can interrupt me in here if you know of anything else that you think would be meaningful to talk about besides all this stuff. Someone who's thriving in the security field or beyond the normal, the security field, I would say has a lot of this stuff. Languages. I'm able to speak X amount of languages. Why is it important? Because if you have a client that doesn't speak language, like Phil said when we were sharing some stuff before I even started, if you have a client that speaks another language and you actually learn that language, you're able to communicate with them directly. They see that you're making an effort to provide a better product than the rest of the competition. Or you happen to work for a company that has operations in 6 countries, 10 countries. You're able to speak, let's say, 3 languages. Now you can reach out way further than the regular professional in your company. Why? Because you can support those operations without having to bring someone in from the outside. And people start looking at you as a leader. Why? Because you can understand them in their own environment. Adaptability. I love this feature. This is one of the things or one of the skills that every single person in the Special Forces learns here in the United States. Let's think about a squad of guys that get dropped in the middle of the Pamir Mountains in Afghanistan and Pakistan. They have to eat goat-based cuisine, no problem at all. They have to learn Pashto or Farsi or Russian to communicate with the people because that's pretty much what they speak in that remote end of the world. No problem, done deal. They have to grow their bears because it looks like pretty much the people that they have to deal with every single day because it's a cultural thing, not a problem, let's do it. I have to adapt to a weather that is completely different from the one I grew up. I actually had to work as an operative in the middle of Pakistan, but I came from Bangor, Maine. Done deal, I'll adapt. They adapt to every single environment that they get thrown into in order to take care of the mission. We're kind of like that as well, as professionals. We have to adapt to different environments, different companies, different ways of thinking, different countries that we operate in as professionals. That gives us an added edge. Because we understand those cultures, we're able to interact with those cultures and squeeze more value out of our operations with those clients, with those people, with whatever you want to call that. Empathy. We're able to identify ourselves with the events, with the facts, with the things that happen to other people. If someone doesn't have support from their top management and they need to do it, that's the reason why they get things done. We understand that. We understand why certain things can get done in environments. We understand why other people get stuff done. We understand what their frustrations are. We understand what their desires are. All that kind of stuff, that's empathy. Having some sort of synchronization with other people's feelings and what they need to them to shape them. Teamwork. I learned teamwork. Many people know me because I'm a big baseball player. I learned teamwork playing in a band, not playing in a baseball field. Because when you play in a band, pretty much everybody's got to be on the same page in a level that's, I would definitely say it's way above the one you should play in sports, if you've ever been in a band. So teamwork is one thing that you'll learn not within the security community. You'll learn it outside. And maybe you'll learn that as a kid doing something else that was not security. That's a great skill that you bring to the mix. Playing in a team, especially when you're doing incident response. Why? Because you got a whole bunch of people running around trying to see what the hell happened. And you got people from the server tower, the network tower, the storage tower, the disaster recovery tower. Try and see if you can get them all to integrate in one single room. I double dare you. Attention to detail. Attention to detail is one thing that people in the plastic arts have very well developed. Attention to detail in terms of how detailed you want something to be, how truthful, how similar to the real thing is. Attention to get those details out so people can see them. Excellent skill to have in security. Why? Because you have to be very, very dedicated to bringing this stuff out from someone who requests it out from you. Or to make a point when you explain something to someone. People skills, oh my God. Many of us struggle just talking to people, just getting our message across when you sit down in front of a client or your boss or your teammates. That is a great skill to have. And maybe someone within your group is not going to have it. But if you're able to develop that skill, wow, works wonders. Entrepreneurship. Having a mind that's set for doing new and improved things. That is something that you learn as a kid. If you had a lemonade stand, or you sold stuff like, I don't know, baseball cards, whatever it was when you were a kid, you know what that is all about. And thank God this is one skill that is being taught and preached nowadays in this country way, way more than it was before. It's actually a good thing. I think it's a good thing. And it's a skill that you can take the rest of your life. Leadership. Man. Leadership can actually be developed in many stages in your life, many stages in your career, but you have to be very careful about how you get to this stuff. Because you got to have a mentor, and you've got to have people to follow you. But nonetheless, it's a skill, and it's a very important skill within that toolbox. Creativity, man, we're all about this. If you were involved in any other activity besides security, you do have creativity. Most people have it, but not all of them. But it's a matter of knowing how to focus that creativity into the stuff that you do nowadays to come up with new ways of doing things or looking at things. I love this because I've been blessed with the opportunity of working with people from many backgrounds within my formative years. People that came from what's called speech pathology, or languages, or accounting, or even law. All of these guys had a different vision, had a different outlook in life that they pretty much taught me and allowed me to see things in a very different way. Those are the guys that give you that added edge. And vision. Vision pretty much goes along with creativity. If you're able to see things in a creative, in a novel way, you have that vision. You have that ability to start seeing things as you'll see them in the future. What's coming next? You're starting to anticipate things. You need another good example. It's great that I have a woman in the room. Because Katie Lamar was the best example of all this stuff. Not just because she was considered the most beautiful woman in Hollywood. Because she was able, remember, the warrior, the philosopher, and the artist. She was able to see beyond her own skill set, her own contribution to the war, and say, I'm not just a pretty face. I got stuff that I think about because I'm proficient in another field. What did she come up with? A radio guidance system for Allied torpedoes to use FHSS, frequency hopping spread spectrum, which eventually became the principle of wireless technologies like Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and CDMA. People like this, she was able to see beyond the obvious things. She was able to integrate those three profiles of a professional in order to get something done for an effort that was greater than herself. That's a perfect example. Not just Jason Everman. This actually, I think, is even earlier and better than ever. And this is something that we can totally adapt to security. My personal favorite, gratitude. Why? Because when I first came to this country 5 years ago, the first thing you look for is a break. It's a big break. Prove yourself. But in order to do that, someone has to give you that opportunity. You can look for it. You can do everything that's within your reach to get that opportunity. But eventually someone gives you that opportunity. Someone gives you that shot to prove yourself. And as an immigrant, it's very, very important for us to prove that we can do something good about the new life that we just got a shot at. So in my case, I tend to add gratitude a lot to this. There's a lot of people that helped me out in the last 5 years. They gave me that shot, and I still think about what is that I can do to make them proud because of that opportunity. So I'm grateful for that. And at least in the security, within the security community, you're going to see a lot of people that are willing to give you a shot, that are willing to give you a hand when things break down. This is a very good thing that is very common about security people. And not just giving you a hand, giving you 5 minutes of their time to talk about something, to talk about an idea, to talk about a concept. And the best thing is someone that's smart and is willing to sit down with you to talk about something. There's nothing like it. And there's a lot of people within the security industry, within the security community, that is willing to do that. Remember, be that type of person. Be that type of person within security. And that's about it. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for joining me in this conference. Any questions? No. Excellent. Enjoy the rest of the day.